Title of the first section of notes is multiplication, property of exponents. Definition for today is parentheses x to the a power, and then outside the parentheses another exponent to the b power. So x to the a power to the b power is equal to x to the a times b. So when you have two exponents separated by parentheses, you can multiply the exponents together, and the base x, whatever number, whatever variable it is, can stay the same. First question, x squared and cubed or to the third power on the outside. Again, for these, the x stays the same. And if you have two exponents separated by parentheses, you can multiply those together, and you get x to the 6th power. Second question, 3 to the 2nd power, parentheses also to the 2nd power. Again, the base, in this case 3, stays the same. The two exponents, you can multiply together, 2 times 2, which would be 4. And again, in any case where you have a number, you can simplify this out. It's not 3 times 4, but 3 times itself 4 times. 3 times 3 would be 9. 3 times 3 is also 9. 9 times 9. Final answer is 81. Next question. Y to the 3rd power squared. And in the same question, another parentheses, y to the 4th power, and then raised to the 5th power. In this problem, we want to solve each of the y's separately. The first y is to the 3rd power raised to the 2nd power. Again, you can multiply these together. 3 times 2 would be 6. And then the second y over here, you have to the 4th power, also to the 5th power. Multiply those together to the 20th power. And then, like the previous lesson, we can simplify two variables. The base stays the same. And if you remember from the previous lesson, if you have two bases, the exponents you add together. 6 plus 20 would be 26 for your final answer. So again, if you have parentheses with two exponents, you multiply. If you have the same variable or base twice, the two exponents you add. And last question for this section. A to the 2nd power raised to the negative 3rd power. The base stays the same. Two exponents separated by parentheses. Multiply these. 2 times 3. 2 times a negative 3 would be negative 6. And again, from previous sections, if you have a negative exponent, draw a fraction line. The negative exponent goes to the bottom and becomes positive. There's no term left on top. There is an imaginary 1 in front of the a. So your final answer is 1 over a to the 6th power. The next part of the notes is more multiplication, property of exponents. The first question is parentheses 2y outside parentheses to the fourth power. In this question, since we have a number and a variable inside the parentheses, the 4 acts like distributive property and goes to both the number and the variable. For example, 2 to the fourth power and also y to the fourth power. For our final answer, again, any numbers we can simplify. 2 to the fourth, it's not 2 times 4, but 2 times itself 4 times. 2 times 2 would be 4. 2 times 2 again is also 4. And the coefficient for this question is 16. Y to the fourth stays the same. And our final answer is 16 y to the fourth. Second question is 12 x outside parentheses to the negative 2 power. Again, this negative 2 goes to each term inside the parentheses. So it's 12 to the negative 2 power and also x to the negative 2 power. If you recall from previous lessons, negative exponents, you'll make a fraction. Each of these negatives go to the bottom of the fraction and become positive. 12 stays the same, negative 2 becomes positive 2. X stays the same, but moves to the denominator. Negative 2 changes to positive 2. If there's nothing on top of the fraction, again, you have a coefficient in front of the x, which is 1, so 1 stays on top. Your final answer, simplify any numbers. 12 to the second power, it's 12 times itself 2 times, which is 144, and x to the second power. 1 over 144 x squared. Next question. 2 x to the fourth, y to the fifth, outside parentheses 0 power. The 0 again goes to everything inside, which this time is 3 terms, the 2, the x, and the y. 2 goes to the 0 power. If you have 2 exponents separated by parentheses, like the previous examples, you'll multiply these. 4 times 0 would be 0. And the y exponent, separated by parentheses, also multiply to the 0 power. If you recall from previous lessons, anything to the 0 power equals 1. So 2 to the 0 would be 1, x to the 0 would be 1, y to the 0 would be 1. Multiply them together, and your final answer is 1. Last question for this section of notes. Parentheses 3 x squared to the third power. Again, the exponent goes to each term inside the parentheses. It goes to the 3, and it also goes to the x. If the 3 doesn't have an exponent, it's kind of like an imaginary 1. You can multiply those, and it stays 3 to the third power. X comes over, squared to the third power, multiply these, and you have x to the 6. Final part, simplify any numbers with exponents. 3 times itself 3 times. 3 times 3 would be 9, times 3 more, 27. Final answer, 27 x to the 6. The next part of the notes is titled Scientific Notation. First question, inside parentheses is 4 times 10 to the 5th power raised to the 2nd power. Again, scientific notation as a number less than 10 times 10 to some exponent. This time we have an extra exponent on the outside of parentheses. Same idea as the previous section. The 2 goes to each parentheses on the inside, each term on the inside. So 4 to the second power. Time sign stays the same. The base 10 stays the same. The 2 exponents, separated by a parentheses, you multiply those. 5 times 2 would be 10. Simplifying numbers with exponents, 4 to the second power. 4 times itself 2 times. 4 times 4 would be 16. Times 10 to the 10th power. Scientific notation, you always leave times 10 to the exponent at the end of your answer. Scientific notation, again, the first number has to be less than 10 though. So if you remember from the previous lessons, if you put the decimal after the 16, you can move this decimal one spot to the left to make your answer 1.6, which is less than 10. So 1.6 times 10 stays the same. The exponent changes. If you move the decimal to the left one spot, you must increase this exponent by 1. So final answer would be 1.6 times 10 to the 11th. Second question. Inside parentheses, 7 times 10 to the 4th, which is a number in scientific notation. Question is, you have the second power on the outside. Same idea, this exponent goes to each number and each term on the inside. If you want to put a 1 next to the 7, 7 to the first power, exponents inside parentheses you multiply. So that would be 7 to the second power. Times 10 stays the same, since we're dealing with scientific notation. Exponents inside parentheses you multiply. 4 times 2 would be 8. Simplifying the first number, 7 squared. It's not 7 times 2, but 7 times itself 2 times. 7 times 7 is 49. Times 10 to the 8th stays, again because we're using scientific notation. Just like before, 49 though is bigger than 10. So what you need to do is move the decimal one time to make this 4.9. And again, if you move the decimal one time to the left, this exponent you increase by 1. So your final answer, 4.9 times 10 to the 9th power. The last section for these notes will be find the missing number. First question. Inside parentheses we'll have x squared. Outside parentheses we'll have a box shaded in, which we must find out which number goes in that box, equals x to the 6th power. So in this question you have x to the 2nd power raised to some number that we must find, and we know the answer is x to the 6th. Again, from previous sections, these exponents you'll be multiplying, so we must find out which number 2 times what would give us 6. Correct answer, 3. 2 times 3 would be 6. Second question. Inside parentheses, 3x to the 3rd power, y to a box that's shaded in. Again, we must find out what this box is equal to. close parentheses to the third power, and the answer for this is 27x to the ninth. So again, the question is 3x to the third, y to some unknown power, all in parentheses to the third power, and we know it's equal to 27x to the ninth. There is no y in our answer, so whatever exponent this is must make the y cancel out. So we need some number times 3. That will cancel out this y. That number is 0. If it's y to the 0 power, 0 times 3 would be 0. Y to the 0 power is 1, or there would be no y in the answer. The other numbers, you have 3 to the third is 27, 3 times 3 is 9, but the number inside the missing box is 0. Find the missing number.